Hello and welcome to the Formula One show, or TF1 for short. My name is Tinus Ferreira, your trusty host and lighthouse to light the way through the dark, murky and sometimes rocky waters that is this complex world of Formula One. As the title of this episode suggests, this is my recap of the Chinese Grand Prix, also known as the 1000th F1 Championship Grand Prix. Now, before anyone says anything, I will mention that during the whole past week, myself and the rest of the F1 online community has been subjected to individuals online who have literally lost their minds over the fact that anyone dares to call this the 1000th Grand Prix because of a multitude of historical reasons for which I do not really have the strength to discuss right now. Apparently, there were like a few races where it was actually Formula 2, and there were races before the war. And these people are just way too ridiculous and too pedantic that they just basically spoil it for anyone. But let's just, for argument's sake, call this the 1000th Grand Prix. Now, I guess we need to address the fact that this wasn't the most exciting Grand Prix ever. But to be honest, to me, it didn't even matter, because you know what? Sometimes you get more exciting races, other times you get less exciting races. And so far, I feel this season, the races and sort of the intrigue and everything going on behind the scenes has been really, really interesting and really fascinating, and has really been, the source of a lot of interesting discussions and debates, and has really attracted many people to come watch Formula One. So I feel those people that are now grumbling about the fact that too few overtakes were performed can go jump, because to be honest, next one will be more exciting again. Or you know what? We must just be grateful for the fact that we can sit down and watch this incredible show once every 2 or 3 weeks. Now, firstly, I think, as always, it would be appropriate to discuss qualifying first. And I guess the surprise was just the fact that Mercedes once again was able to score a 1-2. So Bottas in pole and Hamilton's second place, which I guess none of us really expected before the weekend started. Is Mercedes the least, although as a pattern is emerging where I think Mercedes is starting to be overly humble, where I think they're sort of deliberately playing down their chances, where they actually know it's probably going to be closer than what they say it is going to be. But I do think that Ferrari themselves thought that it was going to be a bit of a closer battle and that they would have a good shot at pole position. And I think we were all quite surprised that Mercedes were in front by that much. I guess not that much, about 3/10, but still comfortably in front of the Ferraris and the Red Bull. Good on Valtteri Bottas for getting pole position. I was quite surprised that he managed to get pole position, because Hamilton is usually quite strong in China. But I guess there's a first for everything. Well, I guess last year was the first time that Valtteri out-qualified Lewis. But yeah, I feel it was a good recovery by Hamilton as well, given his struggles over the weekend, to be able to, around I think Q2, he just picked it up, and all of a sudden he was sitting pretty again. It was quite surprising and quite impressive actually to see how he was able to sort of figure out his difficulties and sort of make it work for him in the middle of qualifying, which was quite interesting to see. But yeah, good on Mercedes. Toto Wolff must be ecstatic. Niki Lauda, wherever he is, must have a big old grin on his face. And yeah, I feel the Mercedes pace, especially when that pace is really showing through this year. Ferrari, I don't think there's much to be said there. I think Vettel would have been pleased to out-qualify his teammate because, of what happened during the previous race in Bahrain and all of the noise that there now is around Leclerc. Yeah, Red Bull, same thing. Verstappen did very well. It seems like he's really driving the wheels of that car, which is impressive. I feel he's putting that Red Bull much closer to the Mercs and the Ferraris and what that car actually deserves to be. Gasly qualified in 6th this time, which I guess is an improvement, but still way off his teammate, which is definitely something that he's going to have to start addressing, because, and as I'll discuss later in the episode, there's trouble brewing in the wings if he doesn't do that. A good qualifying result for Renault, I think that's worth mentioning, with Daniel Ricciardo and Nico Hülkenberg qualifying, I think, 7th and 8th, if I'm not mistaken, which is I guess a good consistent showing for them and a good base for them to sort of start making gains up the field. McLaren had a quite a disappointing performance in qualifying, with both of their drivers going out, I think, in Q2. Although Carlos Sainz did mention that China was always going to be a difficult track for them, and that it sort of highlighted shortcomings in the car that they have at the moment. So I guess McLaren will have to go and fix that thing. Any of the other teams, not really anything super interesting. I mean, Williams again, woeful Williams. Haas, nothing interesting there. Sauber, nothing interesting there. Yeah, I think, I mean, we all saw Alexander Albon's crash in FP3, which was quite a scary crash, but he seems fine. And then, I mean, obviously had to start from the pit lane, but I guess I'll discuss that a bit later as well. Now I think we can move swiftly on to the actual race, the important and the interesting part of the weekend. And I think Mercedes, again, what an unexpected sort of development that they were so comfortably ahead of the rest. I mean, we were all, and I was super excited to sort of see this four-way battle between Mercedes and Ferrari. They had really consistent and equal race pace on the Friday afternoon and in testing or in practice. And today Mercedes just got up and walked away. I mean, couldn't believe it. And but interestingly, so Nico Rosberg mentioned something very interesting after the race on the Sky Sports broadcast, where Ferrari has admitted that they have some aerodynamic principle that is not working for them, where apparently the rear wing that they currently have on that car isn't providing the type of downforce or isn't working with the rest of the package as it should. Now, I don't want to be smug or anything, but I guess, let's be smug. So, right at the beginning of the season, and I think I shared it again today after the race, I shared an article written by the BBC, or it was published on the BBC's website, called The Secret Aerodynamicist. And he wrote to me the most interesting little piece about the different design approach that Mercedes took to Ferrari, and the fact that Mercedes has what they call a wing that's more in line with the outwash aerodynamic principle, and Ferrari has employed what they call more of an inwash aerodynamic principle, which basically, in long story short, I think go read the article if you're interested. It's on my Twitter page, and it's a fascinating article if you're interested in aerodynamics or sort of how these people go about designing these cars. But what it basically comes down to is Mercedes has better front downforce due to the wing that they have, where Ferrari sort of needs to make up the missing downforce from their front wing later on along the body of the car, so through the barge boards and then through the rear wing. What the interesting conclusion that this article then sort of reaches is it says that Ferrari has sort of developed themselves into a corner, or the route that they took was sort of putting them in a corner where they just have this maximum, or they've already maximized the degree of front downforce that they will be able to generate with their front wing, where Mercedes will have the ability to consistently develop the front wing, and then also, as the rear wings are more open for development, develop the rear wing and be able to offset the downforce with the front wing and just have a better balanced package on an overall level. And I think Nico Rosberg alluded to this fact, and then also the fact that Shanghai is quite a front downforce, or quite a front wing intensive type track. So it was interesting to see that Mercedes was that much quicker in the corners, and especially in the faster corners, which completely negated the power advantage that Ferrari seemed to have in the straights. So I feel this is something that's going to be very interesting and fascinating to see going forward, where it seems like there are definitely going to be tracks where Ferrari is going to be able to sort of point and squirt their way ahead of Mercedes in terms of sort of slow corners and long straights, something similar to Bahrain incidentally, or even Azerbaijan that we're going to see in 2 weeks' time. And Mercedes will sort of again have the advantage in the tracks with the higher speed corners and sort of the more flowy type tracks, which is I guess something that they've always been quite strong at. But yeah, just sort of the fact and that these two teams took the two completely different design directions is really starting to come to the fore now. And I think it's fascinating that Ferrari is now realizing, and according to Nico Rosberg now, that actually they have a bit of an issue, and that they're now going to have to really sort of rethink their whole package in terms of how the air flows from the front wing through to the barge boards and through to the rear diffuser and the rear wing, and how they're going to approach that whole situation. So you heard it here second after Nico Rosberg, but go and you need to go and check it out, and you need to go and investigate whether this is actually an issue or whether it's sort of a once-off fluke and Ferrari is going to come back a lot stronger in the next few races. I think if you want to talk about Ferrari at this race specifically, obviously the main talking point here was again Ferrari employing team orders for the third race in a row. So in Australia they told Charles Leclerc that he's not allowed to overtake Vettel, with Vettel being in front. Previous race in Bahrain, same story. They told Leclerc, no, he can't overtake Vettel yet. He has to hold off for a few laps, but Leclerc ignored them and overtook Vettel anyway. And then now, this race where Leclerc was in front, he overtook Vettel at the start, so a good start from Leclerc there, and they were all basically struggling to keep up with the two Mercedes in front. And Ferrari then decided that no, actually maybe Vettel had a bit more pace, and then decided to tell Leclerc no, he needs to give the position to Vettel so that Vettel could go and chase the Mercedes. Now, awkwardly for them, it turned out that in fact Vettel couldn't go any faster, and they were basically stuck in the same order, just with their positions reversed, with Mercedes still driving away from them. But then what this had as an effect was then that Leclerc was constantly compromised in terms of strategy, where he was undercut by Verstappen, he stayed out too long on his tires. Ferrari sort of just lost the plot, it felt to me like basically with Leclerc's strategy, where they didn't really know you didn't really know what to do, how to go about, sort of fixing this mess that they made. And then, to add insult to injury, they decided to use Leclerc as sort of a rear gunner to prevent Valtteri Bottas from stretching his advantage over Vettel, which was a spectacular disaster because Leclerc was on super old tires and Bottas was on brand new tires after having pitted. So he just walked past Leclerc, and then Leclerc was sitting duck basically to Red Bull and Verstappen. So I don't know, I just feel they made a bit of a mess. I mean, afterwards they really tried to justify, their rationale for doing this, and that they felt that they've optimized and maximized their outcome for this race. But I don't agree at all. I think they could have comfortably still been able to get a third and a fourth place, just by not doing all of these strange things with Leclerc's strategy. Leclerc had the pace advantage over Verstappen during the whole weekend. So, I mean, even if Verstappen undercuts Leclerc after the first pit stop, it would have meant that Leclerc was 20 seconds behind Verstappen by that point. So, no, I think Ferrari made a bit of a mess, and I think they sort of ignited a bit of an inter-team battle, where I think Leclerc is going to be a lot more careful or a lot more dubious in his approach to team orders going forward. And I think, it's going to be something to really pay attention to, and to sort of see how this whole teammate dynamic between Vettel and Leclerc is playing out. Because, to be honest, Leclerc's stock is incredibly high at the moment, so Ferrari also can't afford to just sort of relegate him to a number 2 driver, especially if he's outperforming Vettel consistently. So they better watch out. The next team that I quickly want to talk about is Red Bull. So slightly lucky for Verstappen, I guess, with all of the Ferrari messes that they were making with Leclerc. But to be honest, Verstappen put in a very, very good and consistent performance throughout the weekend. I feel he's sort of outdriving his car at the moment, putting the car in a position to capitalize on things like the strategy failure from Ferrari's side. So, I mean, Verstappen is third in the championship after the 2 Mercedes drivers, so he's doing something right, and I think we should applaud him. And he's, I think, really starting to show his maturity, apart, I guess, from the whole weird incident during qualifying where Verstappen didn't make the finish line in time, because apparently, and Lewis Hamilton was just golden on Instagram, I think I shared that on Twitter as well. Apparently, Verstappen believed there was some gentleman's agreement in Q3 that no, you won't overtake each other even if under pressure to actually cross the line to start your last run for qualifying, which was ridiculous. But anyway, everybody laughed at Max a bit there. But yeah, good job by Verstappen. Not so good job by Gasly, and I feel we've been saying this now for the first 3 races, but Pierre Gasly needs to get his stuff in order, because he's like almost a second behind Verstappen in terms of qualifying pace and in terms of race pace. And whoop-de-doo, he got the fastest lap after putting in on a set of tires, and basically with almost no fuel on the last lap was able to, outperform Vettel by 1/10 of a second, I think, in terms of the fastest lap. So no, Gasly needs to go back and he needs to improve, because Alexander Albon, and we'll speak about him a bit more later, is waiting in the wings, so he needs to be very, very careful. Renault, good for Daniel Ricciardo. He finally finished a race, or he finished in the points, so he got his first points for Renault. But I think on the flip side, they were actually quite far behind the top 3 teams, so they still have quite a mountain to climb in terms of making sort of up that difference. I think not much else to mention there. Nico Hulkenberg retired again due to reliability issues. So, that Renault is just desperately unreliable, and they're going to have to really, I don't know what they're going to have to do, but they're going to have to fix things, because the car is fast enough to actually really be competitive, but they're throwing away points left, right, and center by just not doing the basics right. And I think the first thing you need to ensure is that your car is actually reliable. McLaren is the next team I want to discuss. I guess they had reasonable pace throughout, but the crash at the beginning with Kvyat and the 2 McLarens ruined their race. I think the only interesting thing to mention there was Carlos Sainz is, I think, really starting to get comfortable in that car, and he seems to really outpace Lando Norris now in terms of qualifying and the race, where I think Sainz actually had quite decent race paces, if I recall. But yeah, I think a bit of a downer for McLaren this week, but I think they'll be back stronger, and I think at least now it seems that they have a good base in terms of their car that they now can go about and develop and improve over the season. I think the standout performance of the weekend definitely has to go to Toro Rosso and Alexander Albon, despite his massive crash in practice 3, where he started from the pit lane and ended up 10th in such a tightly contested and close midfield is quite an extraordinary achievement. And I feel the fact that he won the official F1 Driver of the Day prize was well deserved. And I think he is really going to be something that Gasly needs to look out for, because he's, in the younger team, he's really doing well. He's outperforming his teammate. He's outperforming his car. If Gasly doesn't pull up his socks quickly, then before you know it, it's going to be Verstappen and Albon and that Red Bull. We've seen it in the past, but with Kvyat and Verstappen as well. So Red Bull isn't scared to actually literally put in a new driver halfway through the season. So that's why I'm saying, that's why I said earlier that Gasly really needs to watch out. I think the last thing that we can mention about Alexander Albon is Leclerc, interestingly, always mentioned that he is probably the driver that he respects the most and the driver that has provided him with the most issues, which is, I guess, quite high praise coming from the person that won Formula 3 and Formula 2 in such a dominant fashion. So Alexander Albon might be a hot ticket for a future Red Bull drive. So let's watch this space. In terms of the other teams, Haas, I guess they were slightly underperforming. Williams, they were incredibly slow, and Sauber was sort of, under the radar the whole weekend. So I don't really think there's anything super interesting to report. I think lastly what I want to discuss about the race was the whole drama about, the whole reason for the change of the regulations this year was to improve overtaking and improve the overtaking numbers. And all of a sudden now, nobody was able to overtake in China. Now, for Pete's sake, it was super, super windy. There was crosswinds all over the place. It was a struggle aerodynamically this time. And just because for one single race, there wasn't that many overtakes. Now everybody's throwing their toys out of the cot. People are sobbing, in complete misery that Formula 1 is ruined. Everybody forgets that 2 weeks ago we had literally the most exciting race in the Bahrain Grand Prix, where sometimes exciting things just doesn't happen. Exciting things can't happen all the time. So I do feel people need to calm down a bit and just, enjoy what they're watching, because it's actually quite enjoyable to watch if you're not looking for mistakes all the time. Now, something that I also want to do, and something that I just want to make clear, and that's something that has become apparent over the past few hours, is that I'm actually quite horrible and quite bad at predictions. Since during the week, I basically made 6 sort of general broad predictions about what I expect to happen during the Chinese Grand Prix. And I just sort of wanted to use this opportunity and provide a bit of feedback around, what I predicted and what actually ended up happening. And it didn't go that well, to be honest. So firstly, I predicted that Ferrari's superior straight line speed will sort of carry it in front and sort of help it to end up in front of the Mercedes cars, which, as I've already mentioned, is basically the exact opposite of what happened. So it seems like I know nothing about the engine power and the balance between engine power and aerodynamics. Secondly, I mentioned that Charles Leclerc will out-qualify and beat Vettel for a second race in a row. Well, I mean, I'm going to say that I was half right there at least. Charles Leclerc did not out-qualify Vettel, although it was close. It was very close, but he did not out-qualify Vettel. And, I mean, in the race, he was ahead of Vettel. So let's be honest, I think if Ferrari didn't intervene, chances are that he would have probably beaten Vettel for the second race in a row. But, I mean, if Ferrari doesn't screw up Leclerc's life, they screw up my life as well. So, I mean, how disappointing is that? Thirdly, my prediction was that you should watch out for a strong McLaren, that they are primed for a great result. Well, I mean, Lando Norris retired, and Carlos Sainz, I think, finished way down the order. So, basically, again, the opposite happened. Not great there. I said, although this one I got right, number 4, as I said, Lewis Hamilton will beat Valtteri Bottas this time, and this turns out to be the case because Hamilton does have a very, very strong record at the China track. Although I have to say he worried me quite a lot during the practices and also the first part of qualifying where he just couldn't hook up a proper lap. But anyways, that one worked out well for me. My 5th prediction was that Gasly and Verstappen will have a stronger result in the Red Bull car, perhaps causing an upset. Again, I'm going to take half of that. I'm going to take credit for half of that, where Verstappen did have quite a strong result, and he did sort of, I guess, cause an upset by beating Charles Leclerc, and Gasly he didn't really show that much improvement, but I guess he did finish 6th, which I guess, yeah, but Gasly didn't really outperform or really provided a surprise result, so I can't take credit for that. And lastly, I said at least one Ferrari engine will cause some trouble this weekend. Now, technically, I was right, but I guess we must first say that neither Vettel or Leclerc's engine really provided that much trouble, although Leclerc had a small thing in free practice where they had just to sort of look at his cooling. But one of the Ferrari customer teams in Sauber had an issue where Antonio Giovinazzi couldn't participate in qualifying because he had the same control electronics problem as what Leclerc had in Bahrain. So, I mean, I'm going to take some credit there. So, I guess out of my 6 predictions, I was right half plus or half. I got 2 out of 6. So, I mean, 33% is quite a disappointing achievement, and I will really strive to improve going forward. And you can check out my predictions and sort of my views on the upcoming Grand Prix, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, a few days before the actual Grand Prix starts, on Twitter, where I basically tweet out my predictions and all sorts of other interesting things under the TF1 show. So you can just go search for the TF1 show if you want to go check that out and call my bluff or criticize any of the things that I say. Next, I'd like to move on to our traditional awards segment, where I hand out 3 different awards to drivers or teams over the weekend, basically just, providing them with some well-deserved credit and accolades for a job well or a job poorly done. Now, firstly, the Pastor Maldonado Award for the most dunderheaded thing done over the race weekend. I think we can definitely give to Ferrari for scoring an own goal and potentially igniting a massive inter-team battle, which might cause a lot of headaches going forward. I feel they handled the whole situation a bit ham-fistedly. yeah, I don't think they really sort of treated the whole sort of already sensitive topic around team orders. They didn't handle it that well. They had Lewis Hamilton #Blessed Award. I think we can give to Mr. Daniel Ricciardo, who was finally able to finish his race in his shiny new Renault and not have a breakdown 3/4 through the race. Scored his first points. I mean, things are finally looking up, I guess, slightly for Daniel Ricciardo, so congratulations to him. And then lastly, the Nico Hulkenberg Podium Award for Unluckiest Driver goes to its namesake, Mr. Nico Hulkenberg, who keeps putting in really great and consistent performances throughout the whole weekend, in qualifying, even in the race, but reliability is just letting him down, I mean, every time, and I think he must really be getting frustrated because he's really putting in the performances that shows all of the top teams that he's actually a really, really good driver, and that he's someone that all of these teams need to consider. I think Renault needs to start pulling up their socks, because at the moment it's not either him or Daniel Ricciardo letting the team down. The team is letting the team down. So Renault, you better wake up. In conclusion, I think it was a relatively boring Grand Prix, not without its controversies and interesting moments. And as always, it leaves us with many, many questions. Firstly, will the Ferrari tension start brewing? Will Leclerc start ignoring team orders? Will Nico Hulkenberg ever finish a race? And I mean, the most important question is, will Sebastian Vettel's new moustache grow its own face? As always, much to ponder and much to think about before the next race. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the show, and please give me a follow on Twitter if you are interested in what I have to say in less than 280 characters. Please also subscribe and leave a rating or a comment if it's not too much trouble. I can't wait to see what F1 has in store for us over the coming weeks, and I'll chat to you again after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Bye.